Yeah. Blackjack. Life is like a game of cards. It's not what you dealt, but how you play it. Yeah. Blackjack. To play each situation correctly. I remember they used to laugh at a brother.
Welcome back, guys. Welcome back. It's your boy DELRAY, Richardson, platinum artist, platinum songwriter, Straight Game TV. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate your time. Hit the thumbs up button. Subscribe to the channel. Tell a friend. And like I always say, if you want to be first notified when I drop some of this straight game, please do me a favor and ping that bell notification, if you will. It's greatly appreciated. And I'm going to get right into it. This question right here comes from a young lady from Kansas City, Missouri, and the question is, in the recent situation involving Mase and P. Diddy, what was the difference between what Suge Knight was doing with artists versus what Puffy was doing with artists in regards to their publishing? Great question. Wow. Where do I start on this one? I'll say it like this. Basically, back in the 90s, it was common practice to either do a publishing deal, a separate publishing deal. In Diddy's case, he was doing separate publishing deal with artists, versus Suge's case, in which he would do a record contract that included a clause in regards to the artist publishing, in which they both would pay different amounts of money. According to Mase, Mase said he only received $20,000 for his publishing, and I believe I heard Jewel on the Art of Dialogue mention that she got like $50,000 for the rights to her publishing. But the common practice was basically Suge Knight and Diddy was basically doing the same thing. The structure of the deal was somehow different, but it was basically the same thing, just separate pieces of paper and involving, the artist publishing. Most recently you heard some kind of diss record that came out with Mase dissing Puffy and so on and so forth. But I have to beg to differ. And like I said, on one end, I can understand Mase's frustration in dealing with Puffy. And it wasn't only Mase. A few years back, it was also Jadakiss, the Lock, Styles P and them, in regards to the same thing happening to them with their Money, Power, Respect album that went platinum, right? And so what I'll say about the Mase situation is, you can look at it like, well, Puffy, ripped them off or got over on them or took advantage of them while they were young and so on and so forth. But it's always recommended, and I'm sure Mase did probably have his attorney look at his record contract. But then there was a separate publishing deal that was offered, in which Puffy agreed to pay Mase $20,000, right? Now, to me, in doing business, I think a lot of these artists, including Mase at that particular time, didn't want to tell Diddy, no, I don't want to do a publishing deal, or perhaps ask for more money, not really understanding what the publishing will be worth later on down the line once the money's invested and the records are sold. You know what I mean? And this is in the hundreds of thousands, and most of the time millions of dollars, right? So what we have here is what I call buyer's remorse. As you see Mase saying, hey, you know what? A few years back, he offered to basically buy back his publishing from Diddy. He offered him $2 million. And Diddy's response basically was, if you can offer me what the guy in Europe offered me in regards to your publishing, then you could buy it back. And he didn't really put a number on it from my understanding, but I believe it was more than $2 million, right? And so I understand Mase's argument, but once again, a contract is a contract. And so once you begin to do business, like I always say, you only get one chance to make a good deal from that perspective, other than what's the language in the contract. If there's some kind of clause, say, hey, you know what, we can revisit this and renegotiate this situation in 5 years, 4 years, 10 years, then okay, cool. You can do that. But like I said, I understand Mace's frustration because Mase helped build what it is, was Bad Boy, Can't Nobody Hold Me Down, or various songs that he had did with Biggie, and so on, and Puffy, and wrote for Puffy, and so on and so forth. So when you deal with that fact, it's a little bit more personal for Mase, being that him and Puff were so close. They were like, at one time they were saying Batman and Robin, from that perspective. But once again, when you deal with the business aspect of what this is and what it means, is Mase can't really be mad. Now, we're going to deal with the fact, because a lot hasn't been explained. And for a lot of people who don't know about, publishing and things like that, I'm going to break it down to you. So like when you do a publishing deal, the publishing deal can be for your entire publishing, meaning the songs that you write, as well as the other side of the publishing, which means the songs that the money generates. So there's two sides. There's writers publishing, and then there's artists publishing, if you will, right? And those checks usually equal out to be the same. Your writers publishing usually comes from ASCAP, like when your songs play on the radio, different licenses and things like that. So there's one side, the writers, and then there's another side. So you basically get two checks. So I'm not sure whether when Mase signed his publishing deal, he signed it for the totality of his publishing, meaning both sides, or just one side, like most artists, which is a portion of the publishing. I'm not sure. So that right there, that hasn't been explained totally. So, but I would believe that for just one side of the publishing, hopefully. And so when Mase would see his, because I remember him saying in one song, ASCAP, where's my check, B, right? And so, which means that he would be getting paid for like songs being played on radio, television, and so on and so forth. But once he would see that first check, let's say that check for the writer side of that publishing that Mase would receive that he didn't sign away, let's say that was for $19,000, right? Then you can 9 times out of 10 expect that the other half of the publishing that he would sign away that he had signed away to Diddy would be $19,000 or possibly more. But usually they kind of weigh out the same coming from ASCAP. But the second part of the publishing will go to Diddy's publishing. Mase wouldn't see that money, right? Okay, now 10 times, 15 times, 30 times over, you get paid from the record company every quarter, which is every 3 months. But from ASCAP and BMI, the music rights performance agencies, you get paid every month, right? So that could be possibly $40,000 a month. 20 on the writer side, 20 on the publisher side. You get it? And so therefore, Mase's his catalog could be worth anywhere from 10 million, 15 million, to $30 million. His entire catalog, right? So you would understand the frustration from Mase. Now, I'll say this. Puffy, what he did basically was, back then, what was considered good business, because Mase had the opportunity to say, no, I don't want to sell my publishing. But I'm sure he probably felt like, if I did that, then, Puff's not going to want to mess with me, and the deal that we perhaps may going to do right now is not going to go through, and I won't be a star. So that's a lot of times what artists are facing when they, do certain deals and so on and so forth. Basically, Diddy owned the publishing catalog to every artist that he had. Faith Evans, 112, Biggie, Total, Craig Mack, Danny Kane, Black Rob, The Lox, Mase, and basically everybody that was signed to Bad Boy. That was one way that you would ensure your future as, Puff being Puff, having, and at that particular time, his publishing company was named after his son. It was called Justin Combs Publishing, right? If you read on back of Biggie's album, once again, like I said, this is worldwide though. When you're dealing with a situation and you go back to what, Puff and them were doing at that particular time, basically, I think it's over 1,000 songs that Puffy controls. You understand what I'm saying? That Justin Combs publishing control. So that's a lot of money. You know what I mean? And like I said, Mase said he offered Puffy $2 million, for his publishing back. And basically Puffy said, no, if you can, basically give me what the guy in Europe offered me, then that's the only way you can get that back from me. And so, but one thing that's in Mase's favor, and I know he probably, is thinking about this when the time comes, like since it was the early 90s, when he signed his publishing deal, there's a thing called a reversion clause, right? In which after 35 years, you can file with the Copyright Office, or get an attorney to do it, somebody who would know a little bit better about that. You can file a reversion clause in which your copyrights and all of the things that you own will basically revert back to you as an artist. So that's one of the remedies that Mase has in regarding his publishing and his publishing rights, and that's for any artist. So once again, it's complicated, but like I said, Suge Knight and Puffy them, and basically back in the 90s, a lot of people were doing those deals. Some people who had great attorneys and understood the business a little bit more, got a little bit more money basically for their publishing, their co-publishing deals and things like that, where they would do a portion, like let's say 25% of their publishing, right, that the record company or the publishing company will own, while they retain 25% of just their publishing asset, not the writing part, just that second part that I was telling you about earlier, that kind of equals up. So you get 50% writers publishing and 50% the artist publishing, right? Okay. And so they would do 25 on the artist side of the publishing, not the writer side. So the artist would still see, that money from ASCAP, BMI, and so on and so forth. And then you deal with mechanical royalties and things like that involving the record sales, right? So that's a whole nother aspect of revenue that comes from that Mase didn't get or wouldn't get, or a lot of the artists who were signed to Bad Boy wouldn't get at that particular time. And so when you deal with that, like I said, it is a lot of money. And like I said, once again, I look at it both ways. Mase has a right to be mad. But like I said, you get one chance to make a good deal. And so if you're on Puffy's side of the fence, you would say, well, yeah, a contract is a contract. Agreement is agreement between two parties, basically. And this is here 20,000 at that particular time, not sure at that time will things blow up. You know what I mean? So let's say if it didn't happen, then Puff would have been out of $20,000. I mean, which today's money, you got guys going in clubs, blowing 20,000 on the VIP section and bottles of champagne. So you would think about that. But what it tells me that Mase not hurting. If Mase could offer Puffy $2 million, then he's really not hurting. But I think it's more of the principle and thinking that somebody basically said that you were like a little brother, or you meant more to them than that you couldn't sit down and say, hey man, I'm really trying to pass this on to my kids and my family, my legacy. It'd be great if you could, you paid me 20,000 for it, right? I'm offering you 2 million, which I think would be a great, investment, long term. Say 20 million back in the night, I'm giving you 2 million now. Most people say, hey, that's a good deal. But like I said, Puffy basically seems to disagree, because like I said, Mase's publishing in itself could be worth 10 million, 15 million, up to $30 million. So when you understand that, like I said, once again, that's the thing from the question from Kansas City, Missouri. So once again, it's a tough business, man. So like I said, I always tell people, if you're going to make a deal, make your first deal your best deal, and don't rush into it. And like I said, once again, a lot of artists, were afraid that if they didn't sign the deal at that time, that they would be blowing an opportunity to become famous or to do what they love to do, which is music. But sometimes, I've never met a deal that I can't walk away from. You know what I mean? And in hopes that I can continue to do what I normally do, which is create. Like I said, because it's all about being creative. Your boy DELRAY, straight game.